quickly get into it. This is Ujjwal from OnePlus. So, all right, let me give me a second. All right. So the basis of this session is going to be about emotional design and user experience. But quickly first, hello everyone. Thank you very much for taking out time for this session. I hope everyone is safe and social distancing themselves. And we are on our way to flattening the curve. So go team. Right. So I am Ujjwal Varma. I am leading design at OnePlus R&D India. So our team's responsibilities are ensuring the principles of OS design are upheld. We also are very keen on user experience. That's what day in and day out we can do. Visual designs of all the OS. We also do a lot of ID collaboration with our HQ teams, and all of the products and features that you see on the OxygenOS, predominantly coming out of India, are designed from our wing. We also set a lot of design directions here, and I don't look the part, but I've been here for a while, 10 years in the UX industry, and worked on a lot of futuristic products, I would say, from companies like Verizon. Virtualized networks, which we worked on, and then Diebold was future ATMs, prototyping a lot of ATMs, and then Cisco is where we kind of build the smart cities, Mindtree, a lot of applications on Microsoft. And so I've done my master's in human-computer interaction and usability methods from Edinburgh Napier University. So that's where I'm from. And today we're going to cover part of these topics. So we're going to focus on how design is key and is sometimes overseen. A look back and why this is important, followed by user experience and how this has come to be a topic for this session. Okay. We'll also cover key takeaways in practicing UX, and finally about principles and history of OnePlus OS designs. Also, the session we will be covering the underlying thinking and logic behind designs in UX. So for those who have been in the design world, this would be a refresher to fundamental thinking, or B, straightforward, a beginner session. An intermediate or express session is one I believe we can cover once we have covered the thinking behind it. Okay, so our first topic, a quite obvious one for this session, design. Okay, let's start with a quote from Bruno Munari, an innovator who was able to file about 200 patents that are now being utilized around the globe. So what is he talking about here? So when the objects we use every day and the surroundings we live in have become in themselves a work of art, then we shall be able to say that we have achieved a balanced life. So what is he talking about is not just about an individual object that's been designed or a surrounding that's been designed, but a culmination of how this transcends into our lives. It speaks volumes about design, one which I'll try and dissect with few more examples. So let's dive into this quote. And okay, so the objects we use every day and the surroundings we live in. Let's focus on objects we use every day, right? By looking at what seems to be common sense now, we are so used to looking at things a certain way that it just feels common sense. But let's just kind of for fun, kind of go back and look at a project by Katerina Camprani, a project called The Uncomfortable. She had created a series of weird things, such as this kettle pots, in which we'll kind of look at right now. Okay, so in this kettle, feel free to engage with the chat, and we can kind of pull back, unmute yourself, talk to us. That's fine. So, have you ever thought of why aren't your teacups wide? I'm sure we could have figured a way to drink a cup of tea from this one way or the other, right? But if you look at it now, what it seems common sense, if you look at it, it comes from the concept that it also depends on humans able to sip a cup of tea, right? Pouring this tea into this white cup might look very artistic, and while you're drinking, you can't take the wider area of it to sip, because the rest of it is going to spoil your beautiful white shirt if you're wearing one, and then you can't take it from the small portion, because that's also going to drip a lot of tea onto your face, right? So what was the underlying theme of it? It was the ability for the humans or the quantity of it that they would be able to sip, right? So that's basically the common sense element right now. But when the first cup was made, right? So do you see it? So the series would be like, do you see it? So even the spoon, right? How about when you're drinking a cup of tea, the spoon could easily scoop up the tea with you, right? But why wasn't it shaped this way? This is some series of uncomfortable stuff. So the exactly pain point here is what's common sense right now, and that part is essentially design. That's what I want to lay emphasis on here. The same thing, right? You would want to lose this key, this particular key. So once you put it in the keyhole, it's vanished, right? So the element that you think is painful in this particular design is basically design. You see where I'm getting at, right? The negative aspects of it that are coming out of this particular design is common sense that has been designed. Or imagine lifting this full pot of like stew, and then you're holding it the wrong direction. All of this was designed for humans, right? Even the cup right here. I think we're talking about a lot of teacups here, but look at how you would hold it. It doesn't make sense, right? But that is one thing that we've understood. Human ways of lifting things or human anatomy that has come down to design. That's how it's translated to design. So when you look at things around you, it's basically not as common sense. A lot of thinking has to go into it, right? And why do you think this has not been considered? What has not been considered here, to be honest? Do you think you cannot pick a nice bunch of noodles here? Is that not the case? No. The thing is basically, are these too heavy? Materials can make these lighter, but what's the core of this, right? All of this cutlery is basically you're able to fiddle with these with your fingers. It's very core for you to use your fingers, the grip you have in the fingers, and that's exactly what has been designed, what the regular spoons or forks and knives that you're able to use. So all of these elements you basically do not see, because so there's a saying, invisible design, right? The same goes, a few more examples and we'll get into the other part as well. So the brush, we would have figured a very good way of using it. If this was what was available, we would have used it to the maximum extent we could. We would come out with the Indian jugaad ways of doing it as well. But the core of it, being a flat brush is what was designed. So anyone, if you were to ever give a brief on designing the best glasses or the spectacles that you're looking at, you would say, hey, I want the glasses to be light. I want this to be of this material. Fitting snugly around my eyes, but you would never have to say like the bridge shouldn't be sharp, right? And and why is that? Because now it has become common sense. But imagine, for anyone, I wear glasses sometimes, the anti-glare ones, but imagine that bridge designed in such a way that it's so uncomfortable. It does not guarantee longevity of you wearing it for a whole day, right? So that particular part was also designed. The same with thick buttons. Don't you think this would be a designer statement? But they don't, because they wouldn't fit the buttonholes itself. And how about the one to the rightmost is the inflatable door handle. How does it make sense? But because it does not, the mechanical aspect of it won't work, right? You're all engineers, you would understand it. So all of these elements that you miss out of what things have been designed. Or for example, look at these stairs, right? They start off with like 3 people able to fit at the top. What are you competing now? Who goes first and stuff, right? So all of these elements, this kind of dwells into architecture as well, right? And this wine glass that you're looking at, it also considers a lot of human anatomy, right? And how you have to sip. This is like, if someone wants to go sober, this is the glass you got to buy. And the chair, and the most uncomfortable chair you would ever see, right? If it's lean, the core of human is to kind of lean back, relax, and this is like the against it. And so if you look at it, if you, like I said, do you see it? You're leaning back and then taking a rest, not the other way around, right? And then the fourth, the last most is what I think is my favorite, because it's not very obvious when you see it. Salt and pepper, right? And it looks like very ordinary salt and pepper, and someone would approve this, and we could have it on all our restaurant tables. But if you look closely, it's an hourglass, right? So the salt has to drip down to the bottom of it, and then you will have to put it on your food. But you cannot place these salt and peppers bottles upside down. They have to, I mean, you cannot place them the right way, where you have salt or pepper at the bottom all the time. They have to be at the top. So this is not the most obvious when you look at it, but this is one thing that has been designed as well. So those are the concepts that I wanted to kind of look at, right? But hey, you would say, hey, Ujjwal, we don't see this all day. We don't see this. This is not what you encounter every day. But my question is, don't you? Right? It may not be as exaggerated as you have seen so far, but ask yourself, don't you? Don't you see it? But I'll show you a few examples, and I am sure everyone in this chat room has seen this. Pull or push? Are you meant to pull or push these door handles? Right? Your guess is as good as mine. I could just go ahead, pull them. I have to push. And if I push them, I may have to pull, right? This is what you see every day. Now, if you don't, I don't know, you should be looking at world, observing quite a lot. But you can observe from now also. You will face this a lot. But don't you think it's common sense to have a push plate where it's push that is near? This is called the Norman door also. It's very common basically. You will see any UX page, you will basically find this. And pull could have a grab handle, right? You just have to pull. And then, but today or once the whole lockdown is closed, you will see a lot of restaurants not having this. A simple bar to push it is also makes a lot of sense, right? But isn't that common sense as well? But it's still prevalent, right? Yeah. So that's the objects we use every day and the surroundings we live in from that code. We're still looking at the code, by the way. But what does Bruno Munari mean by have become in themselves a work of art? Yeah. What is work of art then, right? I will strictly say is invisible design. This kettle right here, right? So all of you might have tried to get fitter, or some of you, and then had like green tea sachets in there, and you might have observed the tea kind of has a strong sense. It becomes a lot bitter because the leaves have now been soaked up, and someone this tilting teapot, basically you put the leaves on the top and then you tilt it, and the water basically seeps in and none of the leaves are basically at the bottom. So once you put that back and you pour a cup of green tea or an English tea, and you would have the most elegant tea, I would say. So it's because why is this it is invisible, right? It's kind of now teasing your sensory taste buds. You would have tasted the most beautiful uh, tea ever. It's because of this tilting part. It's because of the design that it has considered. Like it has solved the fundamental problem, but it doesn't look like, hey, it doesn't make a statement saying, hey, I can make great tea. Even when I'm explaining this to you, you would still, until you found yourself in that use case, you wouldn't think of it, right? So that's basically invisible design. So that's a form of work of art. This global knife, this is something you can buy commercially, but this is a knife, functional, sharp, and balanced. This looks like an endorsement, but global knife, they're so good at it. So if you balance it out on your index finger, perfectly balanced, it has the right weight, you can cut stuff perfectly and precisely. Serves the purpose. It's so sensual. It's so emotional when you do that, when you're able to achieve that, right? Or also drawing interface from the code itself, right? Uh, this one designed from LSE. This is something you can also buy commercially. It sits on your countertop. It sits like an extension of your kitchen. it's like an extension of your thoughts, right? And then it's very functional, it's very minimal. And this, from core utilitarian purpose, it has now become an extension of your kitchen. So that's basically what the code kind of gets to, right? So it has now, from the objects, now these have become an extent of your life. It's basically now giving you a balanced way of doing things, an emotional perceptiveness. Your brain releases certain chemicals when you have these achievements that you do in a certain way, right? So that's where the invisible design has the capability to take you to, right? Right. So that's basically how I wanted to cover this list of things of how certain things that you think are common have been put a lot of thoughts into, a lot of considerations from a technical standpoint, a lot of considerations from the human stance. Now that we've looked at industrial design or cutlery design and other aspects of design, you've kind of looked at the part where what seems like common sense now have evolved through ages to get here. So that's the fundamental thinking I want you to like it. I want you to also observe things around you. So given the case that the push and pull door, which should be common sense, but it is not, right? So yeah. So from there, from that thinking, from that fundamental thinking, let's kind of jump into the whole world of user experience. And the pretext that I've given so far of all the designs that you've looked at, right? That will translate into this topic, and that's the reason why I've covered that before. So, what is user experience? Let's get into it, and let's start where and how. Let's look at the brief history, and I wouldn't cover. I would say this is around 5,000. There were concepts of these even in Japanese culture, Feng Shui. We're not going to cover these because a lot of those documentation is not available or something that I couldn't get through. But it all started. It had roots in ancient Greek science of ergonomics. The words you see are ergo and nomos, which is natural laws. Ergo is work. At the core, it was just to set principles, that were more convenient and efficient. This science kind of translated into the ancient ergonomics, which kind of moved past. So I'll say the two things that you're looking at, one of the examples that you had seen earlier, the hot pot, you had handles both in the same direction, right? But here you see a bi-handled bronze urn. The necessary force basically to lift the urn is applied to the lower handle, while the upper one is used to control the flow of the liquid, right? The tri-handled urn that you see on the right it has two horizontal opposed handles fit for carrying it when full. Okay, the third neck attached handle fits, you can carry it when it's empty. It also facilitates when you're putting it on your shoulder and carrying it on the shoulder, you can hold it and it kind of considers those, right? So you see how that had moved into where we are right now. So, and early guys, so any if there's any product managers, does someone have a question? All right. Okay. So if someone wants to be a product manager, or if there's a product manager in-house, so these were very early PRDs, like early guides to, this was specific for, these are extracts from Hippocrates around 460 to 370 BC, for a surgery that occurs in a hospital, basically. It kind of states like the following is required: patient, surgeon assistance, tools and lightings, and how the lighting should be placed. He should also attend to the patient's position and the surgical instruments. Attention should be paid to the method and place. So all of this was also considered, so the surgeon can perfect the procedure. Perform the procedure in a perfect way. So these were all And that's how we kind of started. And from there, a lot of it, the bridge was basically Frederick Winslow Taylor, like it's mentioned here, was influenced in the efficiency movement, who sought to improve industrial techniques, right? In order to determine how much work should probably be expected, he began to study and analyze the productivity of both the men and the machines. At this time, there was no concept of productivity in the 1900s. His focus on the human component of production was labeled as scientific management. Okay, it just considered four principles, like replace rule of thumb work methods with methods based on scientific study of the tasks. Scientifically select, train and develop each employee, detail instructions and supervisions. Applying scientific management principles to planning. So that's how very early on, but it kind of started there as and very influential. It was also called Taylorism around the industrial era. And then follows suit, Toyota followed a human-centered production, mainly aimed at improving workplace culture for the workers, right? And then Henry Dreyfuss, an industrial designer known for the Western electric Model 500 telephone that you look on this slide to the right. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but we have. And this is the older telephones that we used to dialing each other. So he also paved the way or bridge between Taylorism to this era, basically, with his book on designing for people, and which is a thumbnail that you look at the bottom left. So he basically brings the old and new principles with his book on designing for people. In the 70s, the era of the PCs, design was now at the forefront by R&D labs at Xerox and Xerox PARC, basically the Palo Alto Research Center, which is now called PARC. They were the first inventors of the mouse and the GUI and the very early, what you see is what you get. Civic is what we call, right? And right, and then it's also moved on to the 90s to now, right? Soon with the dawn of personal computer era, psychologists and engineers began working in cohesion. And this was around the same time Don Norman coined the term user experience around 1993-95, okay? Mainly to describe key functions his team was engaged with while he was working on Apple computers. Now we've kind of moved to tiny and highly portable computers, right? All of the computing is now super available. But why is this of prominence? Why are we talking about history all the way from Greek ergonomics, Hippocrates, and then all the way to when this was defined as dawn, right? But if you look at it right from the beginning, even though digital medium was non-existent, huge emphasis was laid on efficiency, right? Optimizing the way humans interacted with their tools. So if you look at the leftmost image here, it's about breaking, right? They're tying things to a huge log, but the braking system when one holds on the other side, right? And efficiency and improvement of tasks has always been key in history. Therefore, it is just evident, right, that human and personalization of tools to match their needs has the most scope for improvement. Tools for this generation is basically technology, right? And so that's what we refine. That's what we build on top of. And who do we build this for? We basically build this for those who use it. And who are these? Those are users. And that's where we get into UX, right? The experience of users while they are using these tools. But if I have to define it, this is how I define it basically, right? A true user experience is one that covers all aspects of the user interactions with the company across every touch point, be it services or products. Like earlier, we'll also look at the topics to kind of let you understand what I mean by this, why I think the true user experience, the true user experience comes out of interactions in every touch point, right? So it's basically about putting user needs before the product goals. So if we'll have to look at this chart to the right, you will see visual design, information design, and a lot of these points. So we start from conception, which is at the very bottom, where you see user needs being set there, right? So if you have to look at all of these, right? Let's start with maybe what visual design is for those, just for the sake of everyone to be on the same page. So visual design basically is a graphic treatment of the look and the feel, basically, and the information architecture is basically the structure of the information space, and then interaction design, that's around the third thing, right? Development of application flows to facilitate user tasks, basically. And then user needs, when we come down to, right? I think if I missed functional so functional specifications would be detailed descriptions of functionalities, basically. And then user needs is externally derived goals for the product, identified through user research, ethnography, a lot of these methods. And then the core site objectives, which is now basically a product objectives, or it could be website objectives as well. It's like business goals or other internally derived goals for the product. So that's how it kind of lays down. But for every aspect, how do we put users there, right? So that's when I say all aspects of the user interactions is where all of these aspects from visual design, or sorry, from site objectives, user needs to all the way to visual design. And when we talk about touch points, right? Let's look at a user purchasing a OnePlus 8, right? So although the image here depicts purchase in a physical world, let's look at initial consideration, active research, purchase, post-purchase, experience to digital, advocating the brand. We basically are handling the operating system or the OxygenOS, and then the user experience side of things. But what is true user experience in this sense, I might be able to explain here. So user experience of the OS should be a buying factor for us, right? So camera quality could be one. The fast and smooth experience that we could be the buying factor as well. But the overall experience is defined by this loop here. And the experience they have in the physical world also translates onto the digital medium. This put into the loop through advocacy, biasing new users, right? So the kind of experience that I have in an offline touch point in one of our service centers also translates to how I feel about the design, right? When you go into our store, you look at it, the way people receive you is also an experience of the store also kind of translates to the digital medium. So that is where I say all touch points, not just the digital medium. It's not about you designing just for the digital medium. You should also take care of all the touch points that the user is at, right? Let's say if it's too heavy, if these topics are too heavy, I've also put together, let's look at the very basic level of it, right? Why, what, and how, what do you mean by all of these, right? So let's look at a very basic level, it is a user-centered approach. Okay, it's basically bridging the gap between what technology has to offer and what the users want to achieve, right? So what do you mean by user-centered approach, which is kind of pointed out here? Designed with users in mind, making life easier, understanding their constraints, assumptions, patterns, and behavior, right? So, but then you think, I can design it, right? I know users, but really, how do we know these users, right? A toddler, like a student, a student specifically is someone who you think you would know, right? And then a family, an elderly person. If the goal of your product is to serve one of these, how do you know these users, right? So that's the study we have to do. And how do we, even if you're a student and someone who you think you know, how do you know their perspectives on life, right? Like, for example, look at this toddler, and then let's say Magic Mouse is something that's been beautifully designed, but is it for a toddler? And the way, how do you understand their interest, fears, and constraints here? Like the student persona that we are looking at right now is right. So the interaction that he has with a drone flying around, how do you translate it to some other product? If he's expecting something, the same kind of interface onto something, and nothing is kind of coming close to that experience. How do you design for that? And someone with a family or someone who's an elderly, how you, someone who's like 22 to 35 years old, can say an elderly man would interact in such a way, right? So that's how you, that's basically put how you put yourself into those shoes and understand those users and build the right products for those users is basically UX. So right. So in order to determine that, in order to get the right things for the right user, let's look at the UX loop, and let's look at one loop of how to design. So let's say a project starts. So initially, this is something that we do at OnePlus as well. Is like we gather all the requirements of that particular product, what their goals are, and then what we do is, first thing is, user is always in the top of our leading up research, and then initial analysis. We do put up an initial, once our design is out well, we test it a lot with the same users. We understand these users, we understand their goals, we understand their intentions, and then we test these prototypes. And once that comes in, a lot of input comes back, and there are a lot of techniques in understanding these users. Basically, it is not just, hey, I given you this prototype, now give me the results, and I just check if it's done or not. There's a lot of techniques in studying these, right? Diary studies, all the way from diary studies to shadowing them, and then getting things out. But so we do that, and we get a lot of inputs from these tests, and we kind of use it to do a detailed design of that. And we do a loop again. We do a lot of usability testing again with these users. And then once it is, we have incorporated a lot of insights into it, a lot of data points around it, and we develop and measure it, right? And if it's meeting the criteria, matching their requirements, and then that's the only point where the product is launched. So that's what the framework is also explained here. So we kind of start off user research, then initial concepts and prototypes, getting into adapting designs from test results, end-to-end designs, deploy, but measure, and then loop back with feedback. Okay. So let's take it one step at a time. So we start with user research and validate product against user needs, market fit for the product, competitor analysis. I think this is how, if you're starting out, or if you're looking at an initial beginner UX product that you want to do, this is the way. Try and do this first, right? Begin with user research, begin with these steps, and then identify your users, right? The first thing, as your users are not always with you, personas would help you understand their viewpoints. When in doubt or having to make a difficult decision, these help you move past. So it's very important for you to have these personas set, and that these are the 3 or 4 personas I have defined, and I am designing for them. Any deviation, your product would deviate, your designs would deviate, the direction would deviate. Right? So it's also about, like, this example persona also has, like, captures their goals, their aspirations, what influences them. Do they have the technical know-how of things around? So basically, you would design differently for someone whose technical cognitive load is quite low, right? And someone who's like an expert who's a pro user, things would be different for them. And then once you've identified these users, map their journeys. Let's say you have this product from how do they find out where my product is? Is it the Play Store? Is it some advertising medium? How do they find it, right? How, if your persona is basically on Facebook and your ads are on LinkedIn, and their journeys is not something you have considered, right? And if your user is on Facebook and you have had an ad, what kind of an ad is it, or what kind of community post it is it that is getting them? Is it getting them to get you to get them to install, right? This is all a journey, right? Right there, you have the opportunity to say this is the kind of experience you would be expecting, and if that expectant experience is translated into what we've told, it's beautiful for the user, right? So from awareness of your product to how they've used it and the word of mouth to other users, that's the most powerful thing for any product, right? I've used it and I've said, hey, this is great, go ahead, use it, and your friend is more likely to use it. And then while you've mapped this customer journey, right, or user journey, or you understand what the opportunities are or the pain points are, right? Users looked at it but is not able to install, or users looked at it but he's installed but he's dropped off here, and that's a pain point. You understand that's an opportunity. Why has he dropped down? It's an opportunity for you to understand this user even more, right? And then you do a wireframe, sketch, and prototype. So brainstorm basically in workshop with stakeholders. Utilize techniques such as card sorting to give you initial direction. I mean, use initial information architecture to create a prototype. There are a lot of patterns that you can readily use, and we'll also cover in the future topics. And just use those patterns in the interest of time. Get things rolling, test it with users. Users are the most important ones that you have to test with, not your design, not your designs. The quality of your design. Your designs are important. The quality of designs is not important at this point. If the quality is at an optimal level where it is not a hindrance for your user to dwell on, it's fine. Okay. Point is to basically put together ideas and test it. Okay, I hope everyone's with me here, right? And then validate, right? There's a lot of methods: remote usability testing, in-house user interviews, surveys, A/B testing. A lot of this can be done. A lot of tools are out there as well that you can immediately do. So I cannot emphasize this enough: validate, validate, validate. As long as you validate with your users, no matter how the product looks. If you guys have ever looked at Craigslist, right? It's still dons the same kind of UI. It doesn't look all fancy and something like Airbnb does, but Craigslist caters to its users, right? And that's the reason it still looks the same throughout the ages. It hasn't changed. Maybe the ads on it have changed a little bit here and there, but the core of it has always been the same. So we also do a lot of, so I say repeat. So that's the whole emphasis on validate that I did earlier. So I mean, visual design is also tested to negate any discoverability issues. So while I was saying, the point was not to do your high quality designs at this point, but when you do, that's where you test again, validate again to negate any issues that have risen up, which is not in the prototype earlier. So repeat the loop, like as long as implement insights that you found, validate with users, and move to visual design. And so always loop back those insights. Right? Okay, so all of this is fun, but all of this knowledge. But what for those of you who want to start today, the core of it, right? For anyone, any kind of theory for you to get you and for you to kind of implement it, the first thing you gotta do is learn by doing, guys. Okay, I'll just give you 4 principles for here, and then some takeaways, which I will probably share with our team as well, so which they can relate to you guys as well. Okay, so understand the UX guidelines, UX processes and principles. Choose one tool to convey your ideas. Stay curious, inspired, and updated. Right. A lot of these are readily available and free for you to consume. So for UX guidelines, I will only show you 3 from each category, each of these principles that I want you to look at. So first thing, UX guidelines, UX processes and principles, one tool, just get to one tool, and then staying curious, right? Easy. So loss of UX, and I'll share this as well. So it basically will take you to right. Can I miss that? Oh, where is this? What? 1 second, guys. I kind of some kind of miss the keynote. All right. So a lot of these links will look human interface guidelines from Apple, material guidelines from Android. So these are all freely available for you to consume. This will give you a head start. This will lay some constraints around you to say what can be possible and what is not possible. All of these links carry guides wherein they tell you a lot of research has already happened. Like for example, the touch, the for you to touch on a touch screen, the pixel ratio is 47 by 47 pixel. It has to be that area has to be that much for you to effectively tap, for users to feel it intuitive. All of these have been constantly researched, and all of this material is available, right? UX process and principles, right? If you survey methods by Google, UX checklists. So survey methods by Google kind of has all of the list of things, which ways you want to survey, and how do you avoid leading questions, and a lot of these are there, which you can readily consume. And I will make sure all of this is available to you guys. And okay, I'll make sure this is also available on my channel. And the next thing is UX checklist for your next product. This is like a site where if you're starting a new product, it has every from start to end. Have you finished all of this? Now, all of these are not mandatory, but it's like a guide which you would like to follow. And Design Kit by IDEO has, like, if I'm doing a one-on-one interviews, IDEO is also interaction design corporate, where you can kind of they've been there for a while, so they know what they're doing. So Design Kit has these one-on-one sessions that you can readily pick up, and these templates you can utilize to adhere to some UX processes, right? And choose one of the tools, guys. The tool is not important at all. I cannot lay enough emphasis on this. Everyone, I've seen a lot of people saying, "Hey, should I use Photoshop? Should I use Illustrator?" Doesn't really matter. It's just your thoughts, a way for you to communicate your ideas. That is all you need, right? And so the tools that I mentioned here are Sketch, Figma, and Adobe XD. All have prototyping capabilities within, and are very easy to use compared to other apps, even from Adobe or anywhere else. But Sketch and Figma are more flexible towards the UI, so you can extend and get to UI as well. While Sketch is restricted to Mac, Figma can run anywhere. So all of these have free aspects to it. Please go ahead, get one of them, Sketch or Figma. If Mac is a constraint, get Figma, or I think Adobe XD is also Mac. So Figma will be a go-to, Adobe XD. Also you can run, right? So, and then while you're doing all of these prototypes, if you want icons, for those of you just starting, right? So icons or illustrations, these are free tools as well, like Undraw and Flat Icon or websites. Basically, you can go get the illustrations or the icons. So it's all about putting the idea. Somebody mute, please. Got it. And for those who want to be inspired, these are three sites that you can always refer to: awards and best folios and UI sources. Best folios as portfolios, basically. UI sources will kind of cover you into mobile applications, web applications, and all of that. Awards is the top tier of designers putting their work there on web related stuff. That's why it has three W's basically. Yeah. But while you're following these four principles, steer clear of these ideas, right? Okay, never jump into action before you get the full requirements, right? Analyze requirements, understand user goals, bridge the gap. So, so the elevator button pattern here, right? If all of the flows were analyzed before, there wouldn't be this need to do this haywire layout, right? Or an escalator going into a wall. That absolutely makes no sense, right? You will hit a dead end if you do not have clear requirements at the start of it, right? And for those of you who are all young, there's this bias towards doing something innovative, which is absolutely needed. But in terms of UI, like I earlier mentioned, a lot of these principles have already been defined, but use those to get there. Keep it intuitive, follow patterns and behaviors. Look at these images. For nobody in the world would ever want a volume to start from the end or try and play Angry Birds to increase or decrease the volume. There's a reason why all TVs increase the volume one after the other, right? So it's the same with like input fields of phone numbers. Good luck getting into Indian phone numbers there, right? So innovation is good, but not at the cost of clarity, right? Okay, and don't ignore prototypes. Our friendly favorite pull and push door is here, and this one right here has a push plate but says pull. Okay, so how are you going to do that? So don't assume and don't go ahead with your perspectives, but understand the users. To the right, no, I mean, if you're ignoring prototypes itself, right? Yeah, it defies the principle of conducting research in the first place. And too often, if you design for yourself, it's going to end up into things like this, right? And then to the right, where you see, sorry, to the right where you see, right? It's basically hot and cold water, but empirical values say that black is hot and white is cold. But when you look at this, the white is at the left, which is hot, and then cold. So it's kind of very confusing for the users to use it. This is like absolute fail to one just. And ambiguity. The decision making for users should be easy. A lot of thinking. I mean, if you look at this example, basically design can kill. Right? Instead of canola cooking spray, using a fly and insect killer on your salad is going to be dangerous, right? And these are both from the same company, like Black and Gold. They're the same brand. They're also, I understand they're following brand colors and identity design here, but it's the two design teams basically do not talk to each other, right? So remove all ambiguity for decision making. Have clear CTAs. Am I going up or am I going down in this particular elevator? So all of this, remove ambiguity. So follow those principles, stay clear of these 4 points. Right? Okay. So, and then UX as a career in the Indian space has a lot of different functions that you can branch out to. So these are several branches of UX, at least in the Indian space. You could be like an interaction design. They're responsible for creating efficient and effective interactions between users and interfaces. I mean, for example, if user has clicked on an add to cart, is it visible on the same screen or does it navigate to another screen? Information architecture, for example, there's a subway map. How do you organize that information? Visual designer is straightforward. It's about form and color. Information designer kind of rare, but with the rise of big data and Hadoop and a lot of these tools, a lot of information and analytics, how do you design for the user to quickly understand is one point. UX writer is something that's coming up quite a lot for those of you who love writing. It would be a good chance as well. So a lot of experience would be defined by UX writing. Service design, also customer facing or facing basically of the enterprise or corporate level. User research 101, that's where all the things start, using data from they could come up with personas and scenarios, and all of this is basically user research. Accessibility specialist, a lot of us have to consider a lot of accessibility designs. I'm not going to get much into detail because we want to get to the core and the basic principles first. And human factors, how do human interact with technology? Ergonomics, something kind of overlaps with industrial design, ergonomic design, and then the core of experience design. Right? UX strategist is someone at the level with the business goal, understanding the products, and then setting user experience goals there. And content strategist, straightforward, relating content with business goals. And customer experience, again, something that's very close to service experience. So it's about understanding, like for example, in a customer store, the experience defined for that customer happens in this space, right? And so what is demanded of you, right, as a UX designer to start off? So basically, UX designers spend a great deal of time presenting to clients and stakeholders, interviewing users, and collaborating with developers and fellow designers. So the number one skill to have as a UX designer is communication. And it basically goes both ways from there and here. But assertive communication, that is something that I would like to add to it between two parties. How are you controlling this with assertion is something that's absolutely needed. So empathy is basically at the heart of user-centered design, right? Empathy for your users, be in their shoes. Think if this product was made for me, how would I like that product to react, or how would I like that product to be designed? And organized, I cannot lay much emphasis here. Basically, documentation and design deliverables. Basically, in a corporate world, when you get into, you would be stifling to a lot of products in your lifetime. You would be doing a lot of core ideas. You'll be designing a lot. But if you have to get the patience and the organizational skills. When I say organizational skills, it's not with the org, but how you organize your tools, how you organize your deliverables, how you organize your templates will just make it easier for you to work on a daily basis. So these are some soft skills that you would absolutely need. And yeah, so let's get into how OnePlus kind of designs some philosophies. I'm gonna, I think in the interest of time, I'm gonna quickly take this forward because I see we're almost at the 1 hour break now. So what is our philosophy? Our philosophy is, when people think about OnePlus, they should think of good design and it being the best OS in the world. That's where we strive for. That's our vision. And our mission, we kind of already do to realize multicultural user behaviors. That brings in a lot of cultural sensitivities. And then localized services, but having the global design language. Not just that, but propagate and evangelize a lot of user experience to our users. Say that, hey, user experience is this great. And take them towards the attention that is needed in designs. I mean, like the common sense that we talked about, right? Let them see that. So that's where you want to be. But our purpose is here to also create experiences that people love, right? Every touch point that I've been talking about so far, every touch point that they interact with our designs, they should absolutely fall in love with it and create relationship that people love. So all of the partnerships that we do, we make sure that we talk about what is important to us, our vision, our mission. So that basically reflects onto our work and through their channels as well. So create a cultural, and we are very proud of how dynamic our teams are. So all of these dynamic teams bring a lot of perspectives, and we create a great environment together. And the last part is create a future that people will love, not just current constraints that we work with, but pushing the boundaries to combine design and tech. That is what we constantly try and do. You must have seen the McLaren concept phone that we had done. This is a culmination of that too. Okay. So some history about how we, when first introduced, and if any of our community has joined here, they all know about this. So when first introduced, it was just beautiful design and pure Android experience that we were talking about. And the keywords then were flat, depth, and motion. So that's how this defined the entire Oxygen OS style. At that point, then we kind of moved on to beautiful design, pure Android experience, the same as the old one, but with OnePlus identity. And the keywords then were flat, minimal, reduction, bold, and clean. And so you see these with some of the inspirations back then. And then from there, so the design evolution from where we were and where we've kind of got to, this is the very early on that we were working with. Yep. And then kind of evolved to when we wanted to have a OnePlus identity. And right now, this is where we are at. We've kind of evolved over the years. It's always very good to kind of look at how our designs came back from a 1.0 to the current version. So much cleaner, minimal, and emphasis on bold. And this is also the evolution that we had with our wallpaper artwork, right? All the way from 1 to X3, 3D5, 5T, yeah, and all the way up to 70. I know a lot of you are still trying to see why the 8 is not here, because I'll have special focus on it. And now let's look at the Oxygen OS, which is the core of what we work on. So all of the designs that you have looked at. So Oxygen OS, we always make sure we cater to our users. And we've done quite a few products from India. I mean, quite a few designs for our products here in India. And then I'll kind of quickly run you through them. This country basically loves cricket, right? So it basically made sense for us to do cricket scores. There's a shelf feature that we have on our phone. If every one of you here, and most of you have OnePlus here, it's very easy for me to explain. Whether you work or distract or wherever you are, it is very easy for you to just swipe, look at the score, and go back. That's what one of the designs what we had picked up from. Work-life balance is something that, so it's basically to try and tackle the balance between your work and life. Basically, digital health is a serious topic, and as for OnePlus, it's our responsibility to help you in that matter as well. You'll be able to assign certain apps to work and certain apps to life mode as well. And you can also automate these when these work and life modes are enabled, depending on your time or depending on your location. All of these apps, you'll get notifications from only work apps when you're at work, and life apps only when basically you can choose to whenever. So at home, if you're connected to your Wi-Fi, it basically starts giving you all of your at-home privileges. And during transit as well, you can kind of pick those up. All right, so let's look at some. So I just have a quick video for you, which I think you'll enjoy. Right, so that's basically work-life balance.
All right, we're here with SAF, also known.
Okay, so the next part, we're going to look at messages. This is also something we understood from our users. We all receive all sorts of messages from various platforms. I'm sure you can all relate to this as well. To address that, we're now automatically categorizing all messages into brackets, which is promotional, transactional, and OTPs. So whenever we understand this particular message has come from transaction, you made an HDFC or an SBI card or basically anything, right? And then it's automatically grouped or bunched into this transactional group. So when you look at this SMS inbox, it's much more clear. It removes all the clutter. It also follows our principle or philosophy of flat and minimal. Right. Right. So then we recently on the 14th have released OnePlus 8 as well. So the OnePlus 8 Pro is the newest addition to OnePlus, the ultra premium flagship lineup. So we've also had 120 hertz refresh rates, and then the latest 865 Snapdragon processor. And then let's try and get you to this. All right, I hope everyone's able to see the video. Hey, so that's our OnePlus 8 series, right? And the lead with speed is OnePlus 8 Pro and then OnePlus 8 that we've kind of recently released. But I'm not going to get into much of this because you already know. So, but hey, question time, guys. We're now at the end of this session. You can go ahead, start with your questions, and I would be very happy to answer.
Okay, that was awesome, sir. That was pretty cool. Okay, so Rajata, we can now end the recording. And guys, you can ask your questions and you can unmute yourself right now and you can ask away your questions related to UX and design or anything related to the deck that sir showed. Okay, let's go.
Right. So, and while we're on this question time, you can always connect with me for UX sessions, experiences, and conversations at my Instagram channel, UX Stack, where I do sessions, on my LinkedIn channel, basically looking at all things in UX, and then Twitter. Go ahead, guys. Shoot.
Okay, so I've got this question. So I'm basically a content writer. So I used to write, tech blogs and stuff like that. So I really like the UX writer position that you said, UX design has in India. So could you tell me what exactly does UX writer do in his daily job profile or something like that? Like, does he has to work in designing stuff or does he have to work in, documentations or what exactly is that?
So, UX writer specifically that I was talking about was that, so there's a certain tone application. So I'm just trying to get to an application as an example, so it will be easier for me to kind of relay this. Have you used Dunzo? Dunzo as an application? Yeah. And you must have got these notifications that are that are very witty, and then that set a very perfect tone for that application. So that's where the UX is in. It's an extension of, for example, UX design is made. So basically, how it goes on is once you do your designs, it's always goes into use current would understand copy review, which is where is that the entire user experience can be set.
Okay.
Dunzo does, right? Or for example,
Right.
if you do a safety application, the way
Mhm.
that application has to say, ensuring giving that positive affirmations to the user, right? That's
Right. Right. Okay.
that is UX writer. That basically the UX writer can be great at it. And if
Okay.
someone
Great.
come from content writing, it should be pretty straightforward. I mean, just
Yeah.
picking up the experience with tools would basically be because once a UX designer gives away you the gives away design, have
Okay.
the same tool to kind of write the copy, so
Okay.
they so the design also considers that you cannot like write a paragraph where there's only two
Yeah.
lines,
Absolutely. All right. Got it. Got it.
right?
Yeah. Thank you. Got it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm basically into designing. Like I'm a graphic designer since the last 2 years. I've been working at an agency. I just really wanted to move into this UI and UX design stuff. So it's really fascinating and all.
Great.
I want to know like how to get started with it, like where to find inspirations and how to just frame ideas so one can make UI and UX stuff.
Sure, sure. Uh, I'm sorry, I never got your name.
Uh, my audience.
Hello, hello. Okay, so I'll try. So from graphic design, so are you into specific print media graphic design, or are you into the digital medium of graphic design?
Mostly digital. Print sometimes, not all the time.
Okay, so when you say digital, are we talking about flyers or banners or ads, or what specific in graphic design? Is it visual identity that you do? Uh, where we at with graphic design?
Mostly those like Instagram posts and all those stuff, and as well as like show banners and stuff. So those things, and
Great.
sometimes into logo designing as well, like visual identity and branding and creating mock-ups. Those things.
Great, great, great. So what I see, I was just asking for your name earlier, and that's where a lot of noise came in. So
Yeah, sorry for that. My name's Satya Mahapatra.
Satya?
Mahapatra.
Yeah. So if I can call you Satya. So basically, what you can do. So what I see strongly, Satya, is you have done for the medium where the mobile is, right? For the
Yeah.
Instagram, you understand how typography works there and how you have to work with constraints. That I see, and I also see that you have done logos. So what I would suggest from graphic design is understand these guidelines that I had earlier said, right? The UX guideline principles, it kind of has human interface guidelines, which talk specifically about UI. Second thing it talks about specifically is the motion principle and guidelines. So what you can do is you can pick those up and that will give you a clear idea, and you will find a lot of patterns and elements. What I would suggest is to start to move graphic design. So now the world is kind of moving towards product designer is a role where they do both UX and UI. So UI has to move and understand UX, and UX have to do UI. So now that you have a head start with the graphic design and the visual design side of things, I would suggest you start from the UI design aspect. To get to
Okay.
UI design, solve things from the UI perspective. And please do not feel bad. UI is an extension of the user experience. So once you get to UI and you're solving problems there, then you can get into deeper principles of UX. So do you understand what I'm trying to say? So you can pick up any apps. Can you tag with someone who has UX experience and then do some UI for them? Can you start from there? And these are some aspects that you have to comment on because
Yeah.
You understand? So I would say it would be very easy for you to transition into UI and then to get
UX.
UX principles all done. You would be solving a lot of UX problems while you're doing the UI. All I would like you
Yeah.
to say is what are these problems you're solving? If you could just note down, you're already getting a lot of those information from UX.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Uh, Hi, Ujjwal. Rajat here.
Yeah, Rajat.
Yeah. So, at the starting of the session, you introduced us about the user experience. I mean, particularly about design and user experience. And most of the example which you were giving were into the industrial design aspect of the user experience. So, my question here is, when somebody comes to you with a portfolio for UI UX position or as such product designer position, so what do you expect the UX part to make you understand that yeah, this person is having a good knowledge of UX?
Right.
Because what I think is to show UX in industrial design products is much more simpler than in digital products. So how to tackle that?
Right. So the gist of this session, I started off with design, focusing on industrial elements a lot, because if we get into the nitty-gritty of UI elements, we'll somehow get lost, and a lot of this wouldn't transition into our session participants here. And so that's why we focused on that. And because everyday things are something that you can relate to, and that's why we focus. But when it comes to the portfolio of things, that's how we can kind of do it, is use cases and case studies. When you're putting up your portfolio, how was your process of arriving at a particular UI, be it a website, be it a screen? It doesn't have. So if you're trying for a UX role, it doesn't have to be great at UI, but how have you arrived at this particular solution would be one. For example, if I'm talking about UI, has it considered, for example, this is an application that is going to be our users are going to use late in the night, or is this an application that our users are going to use at an industrial level outside in the sunlight, right? So then the UI would be, the colors would basically be different, right? I might use yellow and those kind of colors that can kind of be bright and show me even under the sun. And if I'm a user that I'm using late in the night reading a book like the Kindle or such, right? And then
Yeah.
I have a very light down tone. These are cues that you derive from how your user does things. But how have you arrived at is one case study that you can build. And that's why I said, for those of who are beginners who have done it right, so the principles are talk about personas, customer journey, understand there's a pain point, and that's why I have done this. So
Got it. Got it.
it translates all the way from the brief, the company brief, and then why you choose a specific user, what their problems and points was. If you could have that as a case study, that clearly shows anyone. You don't even have to talk to them. It clearly says, oh, he has understood this and this aspects of UX and this aspects of UX. He has done storyboarding, so he understands the customer journey. And now there's a pain point that he has derived here, and I see that it is translated into the application. So there are 3 or 4 skill sets that are readily shown right there. If I was able to answer your question.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got that question. I mean, the answer which I was looking for. And just top of it, just in the previous question when you were saying that UI is not just UX. I mean, UX is not just now a UX designer or UI designer. So it's part of a product designer as such who is looking into the market. So as such, how important is to show the visual element in the portfolio?
So what I was saying, Rajat, was also that the all of the companies are basically moving forward now. The transition is kind of happening, but the reason being that you cannot just have like UX only doing UX. How about we leverage that extra time with them? It's to do with a lot of other elements. That is also an important, very good opportunity for everyone to upskill for both UX and UI. That just increases the number of people that can do end-to-end designs for UX. But having said that, right now, everybody understand that it's upskilling, but please don't be on two boats at the same time. Be very strong in UX or be very strong in visual. You have to
Okay.
focus on one thing, and everyone can understand that if you're very strong in either UX or very strong in UI, it is very easy to get to the other skill set. But you're between two roads, it is very difficult to.
Sure. Thank you, Ujjwal. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajat.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions in the chat section. So if you can go over there.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, you asking me to look at the chat? Okay.
Okay, so do you want me to read the questions or anything works?
Okay. Yeah, it was just okay. Okay. Wait. Okay, let me know if I'm starting from the bottom. Abhinav, how should I start what are the resources? Okay, Abhinav, I will try and get this PDF out for you where all of the resources that I talked about, the 4 principles that I talked about, you can pick it up from there. Manish, is this something that's possible for us to do? Hello, I think Manish, you're on mute maybe.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I couldn't hear you actually. I was just, talking with my dad. Could you please repeat?
Okay. So there's this question from Abhinav talking about
Okay.
you want to learn UX and what are the resources. I was saying
Right.
keynote we had like 4 decks that had some initial things for beginners, and I would share it with you. And would that be
Sure.
possible to share with Abhinav?
Yeah, absolutely. We will do that.
Great. Okay, and the next question I'm fine using this. Okay, same books. So, Surya, I was just looking at your question as well. Surya, I would say start looking at those principles, understand those human guidelines, and start practicing. Basically, there are a lot of books that you can refer to, but I would suggest pick something up and get it, and you will get there. Because so again, for you as well, that resources set would be of great help. It has UX laws, and it also has like guidelines to get you started. So I suggest we get there. Yeah. But I also post what books are important. I would do that as well. So you can connect with me on my social channels as well. I kind of do that, and I'll have added my the list of books that would be important there. Okay. OxygenOS, lack of
Those are the, I guess, the couple of questions. And there's another question asked by Asutosh. So he's asking, what are some of the UX design tools?
Yes. I was just looking at. So Ashutosh, UX design tools. So to put your concept to idea would be Sketch or Figma. It doesn't. You can even do it on your on a pen and using a pen and paper. But UX is basically about the thinking behind it and how you're able to solve that problem for user. But if you're talking about communicating the idea to other stakeholders, you can use Sketch, Figma, Adobe XD, Balsamic, Whimsical, anything at your disposal you can do. Don't worry about tools. They should always be a medium for you to relay your thoughts, and you shouldn't look at it more than that.
Okay, so I have another question from my side, sir. So how do you figure out what colors or what kind of design pattern to use on OnePlus, because on OxygenOS, because your phones are being used by kids who are like teenagers, students from class 5, 7, 5 or 6, they have been using smartphones. and there may be elders like at the age of 70 or 80 who might be using OnePlus as well. So how do you figure out like what type of design to keep? So I actually I used to make apps, but I am focusing on UI as such, so I could get some insight on that.
Right. So, like mentioned as well, we stick very close to the guidelines that we have for our that has been thoroughly researched.
Okay.
For example, if you're doing so the core OS basically, as we see, right, the OS interactions and all of these are also basically tested a lot, Manish. But the underlying concepts would be adhering to Android and a skin over it and a layer of experience. You also follow. So we also consider a lot of performance thing and how our users love our experiences because how fast and smooth it can be, and we lay a lot of emphasis on it. But when it comes to individual apps that you were like mentioning, right?
Right. Yeah.
We do for every app we do a thorough testing with our users, and that kind of comes out, and a lot of A/B testing. And I think I've seen a couple of our community members here as well, and they would know we do a lot of A/B testing. So this, I think this was one of the comment that you had made as well. So we do a lot of A/B testing within our own community where we share, hey, do you like this or do you like this? Which spacing, this spacing, that spacing. We do a lot of those surveys. So it's all about if you could, okay, if you would like to do that, I would suggest, as per the guide, as per the norm, as per the core principle of it, if you are able to find 5 core users who would use your app,
Okay.
that's the perfect sample size. You don't have to do like 200 or 300 people. I
Okay.
mean, source those many. 5 would be a perfect sample size, but I would say 10 because if testing it,
Okay.
sorry, the first one could be a pilot, and then
Okay.
you can learn from that pilot if you made any mistakes, if it's the first time you're testing it, and utilize the other 5 and have this tested with these 5 users all the time. I mean, the users would change obviously. If you're able to
Okay.
source,
Yeah.
great.
Okay,
Hello,
okay, got
sir.
it. So, you want me to take some uses and then test it out. Great. Next
Yeah.
question.
So for
Hello.
us, it's basically a lot of testing.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah,
Hello.
hello. Is this Samir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Samir this side. So, what my question is, as being a self-learner in UI UX designer for at least 1 year, so basically I was seeing for the job profiles for MNCs. So they've been asking for more than 2 or 5 plus experience for the job. So, what would you recommend to hit a shot for MNCs for job for UI UX designer?
Mm-hmm. Samir, your motivation for MNCs, is it derived because of the kind of work they do, or the culture you see that they have? Because what I'm trying to get at is if your portfolio is strong and if it's great, Samir, I would say, so if basically if you get into, what would I say? Have a lot of experience under your bag rather than aiming at an MNC which only has like one project a year. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? I would suggest,
Okay, so
no, you
yeah,
can
yeah, go
hit
on.
those
No, no.
MNCs too. You can hit those MNCs too, but I'm trying to
Okay.
understand your motivation behind it. In the long run, if you're just started out and if it's just 1 year, and if you would want my advice, I would say the more projects you do with UI and UX, the different perspectives of the different users you would be able to do, the kind of experience you have at the end of a 4 year tenure would be great, would be a massed experience that you have from different varied projects that you would do, which I think you would probably hit a lot from startups and companies that may not be on your radar right now. But please keep
Okay.
your
So
opportunity.
freelancing is your answer. Freelancing.
No, 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 not free, not freelancing, but any other companies also, right? I'm saying work is more important than the company itself, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, okay.
But I'm saying if you don't care about that, but if you care about getting into these MNCs, make sure you have a strong portfolio. Make sure you showcase what you've done, and that should be
Okay.
enough. If not one, you would get into some of the MNCs. If that's the criteria that
So
you're
one
looking.
more thing,
Yep.
one
Go
more
ahead.
thing which I saw means in these profiles under UI UX designer, they were also asking for HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, and
No,
JavaScript.
no,
Is it
Samir,
necessary to
not
get
at all.
into this?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I I cannot do the markup language. I know how things work basically. I know the tech behind it, but I don't know how to code. If that answers your question, hopefully it does.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir.
Hello, hello,
Hello.
hello,
Hello.
hello,
Yes, I can
Yeah,
hear
you
you.
can speak. Hello.
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 Hello, sir. Can you suggest me the best platform to learn UI UX?
Hello. Yeah. 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 So I'm sorry. Who was that? Abhishek or who's?
Yes,
Okay. So
Abhishek here.
yeah. Abhishek, I have some. I have some resources outlined in this deck, and which I think Manish will also share. You can start from there. A lot of, for example, your UI. So why I shared these resources is because they are the core of what majority of the companies are working on. For example, if Instagram wants to do
Yes.
a mobile app, it does on the Android or the iOS version, right? And both of those guidelines are there in your resources right now. So all you have to do is understand these and follow those four principles, and you should be able to get a good learning curve right there. You should be able to get started very soon. So it's if you're looking at some platform, it could be any online digi platform that you can learn. But the gist of it is about free content. Look at it, try it, and see if it suits you, and get from there, Abhishek. Uh,
Hello,
was that? Did you get that? Oh, sorry. Sorry.
hello.
Was that? Yeah, I can hear you, Arjun.
Yeah, this is Aryan, sir.
Hello, Arjun.
Uh, Sir, I have a query. I have been in UI designing for a month and I've been learning the concepts and principles.
Correct.
So the problem which I faced during a project was the conflict between the developers and me. Like what was designing, they were not able to implement it because they have certain limitations on designing those tools, building those buttons, animations. So the UI designer doesn't have that freedom to work
Right.
about the designs and visual concepts they actually wanted to apply. So how to work with that constraints when how to understand the developer points of view when you're designing a product or some kind of app or website.
Right. So, Aryan, that's a very good question, and that is something that it happens very much in the real life in real life projects. There's two aspects to it, Aryan. One is where tech can do it, but they don't want to do it, which is in case you just have to push.
Yes, sir.
But there's also the second thing that we have, wherein there might be some aspects that we might not have considered, which happens at a very early stage because we are very much focused in the designs and the user aspect, but the platform has some constraints to it, which is the second part of it. So there are two parts. You have to identify which one this is, and if you absolutely know this platform can do it, you should find examples and showcase those. But from the deck, and this is what was important, what is demanded of you was one thing that I had covered in this session as well, is assertive communication, right, Aryan? So the way we put it is also important because we are working with these developers all the time. These are our partners in getting this for the users. For us, the end goal is getting it to the users, and we should make sure we do that assertively. So out of those 2 points, now consider if this is now something that technically possible on this platform, find those examples, and in a very assertive way, get this communication out to our developers. Now, once you do that, and then developers might have a different environment which they are working, and if that is not possible, we have gained knowledge, right? We have now understood that, hey, oh, this is a problem, and I have to, for this environment on this platform, this may not be possible, and I will equip myself with this information for the next app that I do.
Okay.
Understood, Aryan? So it's all about figuring if it's possible. Yes, absolutely, we have to get it done. If you think, and always back things with what we do, basically, when something like that happens, and it does happen with us quite a lot, we do a lot of testing.
Yes.
I mean, we put that, we test that with users, and we show those results to the stakeholder and say, hey, this is needed, this is what the user wants, and now that gives a push for them to allocate more time, because ultimately that is what the user wants, na?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I would suggest try these two, and if not, connect with me, and let's focus on the next step. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Aryan.
Okay, so there's another question in the chat section. So Abhinav is asking that he has been working on Figma and he came across Framer X. So could you tell the difference, or could you like tell which one's better or which one's favorable or something like that?
So Abhinav, as okay. So Abhinav, it's all is coming from learn HTML, CSS, and sorry. I'm just trying to catch up with things. So Abhinav, you've again, it's not the tool, but what is the advantage that Framer X is giving you would be the question. For example, for us, we have a component library, and for us to choose a certain tool would depend on that component library, because we'll have to hand off our stuff to developers. Now, how do we do it? Which tool does better? It depends on individual teams and individual organizations. I mean, separate organizations. For example, some previous organizations where we used to work with, we used to have like a sketch plugin where if you just export, all of the specs are now in an HTML format, and that worked for that company, right? And for this one, we want to have like pattern libraries, heavily specced out, show perfect guidelines for the developers to develop. Now, this company's tool of choice, it was Sketch earlier, but now it's Figma, let's say. So it depends on what you want to do. Would you want to hand off? What do you want to do? It all depends on that. I mean, so I won't be able to comment on tools itself. So that will be very difficult for me to comment on it.
Okay, cool. So the next question Abhinav had is it important to learn HTML, CSS, and JS? I guess you've already answered that question. So Abhinav, it is not much important to learn coding, as such sir doesn't know how to code, and me neither. All right. So
Right.
the next question we have from is Saurav. So he's a UI UX designer from Pune. Hi Saurav. So he often collaborates with the developer. So he's thinking to learn front end coding, and would that be helpful as a designer?
Sort of, I would say be strong in one, but it is also nice. But where do you want to focus your energies on is what is important. Front end coding is all nice too, but it depends on your career goals as well. But I would say be strong in one aspect. Is this front end coding to understand the constraints? Go ahead, spend just some time, not like 10,000 hours on it to become an expert, but just to understand. So then your direction should be, okay, I'm just have to understand it. So I'm not going to go heavy into coding and create an app for myself or a website for myself. There are a lot of people who are able to do both, but at this point of your career, you would be better judge here. Would you? Is this for your constraints understanding of the technology? Then you could probably do it. You could get just some knowledge. So like Aryan was mentioning earlier, you could basically say, hey, this is something I know in front-end coding, use this particular JavaScript and this should be up and running. And this is something you want to leverage, you can do that. But if it's like a career, this like hybrid, it's not there yet. We're still at the stage of UX and UI combined. An expert at UX and UI would something that you would aim at if you want to be a designer. Yeah. Yeah. So if it will be helpful to a designer, it will be helpful only to understand the technical constraints. I hope I see that was the question. So that is the answer.
Okay, so we don't have any more questions. Plus, we're at 4:40. So I guess sorry for taking so much of your time, and it was a great session. Thank you for taking out the time, sir. Because I hope that it was really insightful and helpful for all the students. And yeah, thanks a lot, sir. It was great.
Yeah, thanks, Manish. I think you said that was the end of the questions, but there was one question that you had asked earlier. And I think now that everyone's here, I would like to answer that.
Sure.
A design degree or an engineering degree or any other degree doesn't really matter. What you have to do is basically equip yourself with that knowledge that comes out with it. I am a graduate in electronics and communication engineering, and then I did my master's in human-computer interaction and usability. So that's where I transitioned. What that gave me an edge or an advantage, I would say. I feel that as an advantage because I understand the tech side of things as well while I'm doing design and decision. So I'm basically trying to bridge both user and technology here. So please see that as an advantage. And degrees don't matter. Have a strong sense of what you're doing, and you should get there, guys. And yeah, so I just had something while we are leaving off. Something just for you guys. We all, you must have all seen it, but I'll just play this and I'll sign off. So anything else? All right. Anything else, guys, before we kind of leave from here?
I guess you can play the video, sir.
This is for you guys. All right. So for all of those who've been juggling and doing a lot of this stuff, that was for you. And never settle, guys.
Great point. Great point to end on, sir. That was amazing.
Right. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me. And let's connect over other channels as well. And hope to see you guys soon. Perfect.
Great, thank you, sir, for joining, and thank you to your OnePlus team as well, and everyone here from OnePlus who joined in as ambassadors or something like that. And thank you, students, also for joining in and taking out the time from your Sunday to learn design, UX, and stuff like that. Okay, great. Bye bye from MSPC side.
Thank you.